world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen.
Then with a crash came a great ringing shout, Ra, Oom, Ra.
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
All right, it's talking about Tolkien, Ben.
It's talking about Tolkien, Nate.
Chapter 4 of The Two Towers, Treebeard. I gotta say, I do not remember this coming so early in the book. I remember Merry and Pippin escaping real early on in the book, and then I swear we went back to Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli and that mysterious white wizard who, spoiler alert, you're going to find out is the good side of Saruman that was separated. You can't prove me wrong unless you're actually reading the book along with us or listening to all of our episodes. So that's canon as far as you know. The movies changed it to Gandalf. Anyway, I don't remember.
It's like Piccolo and Kami. I should do a comparative analysis of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
and Dragon
I'm
Ball
pretty
Z.
sure that's where he got it from. He copied Lord of the Rings for Dragon Ball.
No, I think Tolkien copied Toriyama.
Oh, he found Toriyama's logs that he sent back in time to Frodo, and then Frodo wrote.
It's like,
this
how
book.
we broadcast a signal out into space, but then it like loops back around in the past.
That
So he was
checks
actually
out.
watching Dragon Ball Z on.
Yeah, Frodo was, because this was Middle
Right.
Earth, ages ago, and he wrote this that Tolkien's just translating. So, but yeah, I don't remember this stuff with the Ents being so early in the book and also resolving in a chapter.
Well, let's be real. It is a long chapter. This is almost
like 32 pages or something.
I was gonna say almost a 40-pager. And I think it might be the most lore dense chapter.
Yeah, there is a lot of. Because Treebeard has lived a very long time.
This might be the most lore dense chapter since the Council of Elrond. I think we should like a preface.
So basically, I'll just let you steer the ship at this point because
yeah, I guess we could kind of go through it. So the first thing I want to say is, and I'm going to read you a little excerpt from a Tolkien letter. This is letter 247, if anybody is keeping track. Okay, so there were no Ents in the older stories, because the Ents, in fact, only presented themselves to my sight without premeditation or any previous conscious knowledge when I came to chapter 4 of book 3. But since Treebeard shows knowledge of the drowned land of Beleriand, we'll get into that, they will have to come in when... No, this is the part in brackets, when he writes the Silmarillion. This is something Tolkien has said in a couple of places, I think, that the Ents literally did not exist until he sat down to write chapter 4 of book 3, which would be put into the Two Towers somewhat against his will. Meaning he didn't want to split the text into 3 books. So I think you can, if you read the chapter with that knowledge, that he did not conceive of the Ents until it just sort of popped into his head, wholly formed for some reason. The chapter makes a lot of sense because it's really different in tone and content from almost any chapter we've gotten so far, except the Council of Elrond. But the Council of Elrond, you can sort of tell is planned because they have this big meeting where Elrond is going to be like, okay, I got to get all these various people on the same page.
Yeah.
With the same knowledge of history that I have. And so I'm going to tell you all the relevant information. And this one, it's just like, there's a tree man. And this tree man is going to tell you a lot of stuff. And you can sort of tell it's Tolkien thinking of it as he writes it, because he's like, and this is it goes way deeper than Elrond talking about the Second Age. It's Treebeard going, and the elves were there, and then they talked to us, and we were there, and then this is our language, and this is our culture, and this is what we eat, and this is what we are. And he's inventing a whole new, like, people have, and this is something Tolkien struggled with, of course, because ultimately he really thought people got the wrong idea of what elves were, but maybe he could have described them at some point. People have some preconceived notion of elves. At the very least, going back to like
super hot.
They're at the very least they're fairy creatures. They're otherworldly. Yeah. They're like people.
So
you can
hot.
Talk to them. You can interact
also,
with them.
if you become the king of all men, you might even get some.
If you eat their food, you become trapped in their realm. They have castles.
Wait, really?
Well, that's a fairy thing.
Oh, okay. I was like, shit.
Sign me up, buddy. Well, that's the thing with elves being elves. Elves are essentially fairies for a lot of the early conception of Middle Earth, and then they sort of separate. And Tolkien regrets calling them elves. He regrets using a name that already had such a connotation and a history to it, because his are different, and being so particular about details
that kind of takes over elves.
Yeah, well, not in his own lifetime, I don't think. So it frustrated him to no end. And I can guarantee he would still have a problem with the way they're portrayed in movies and video games and Dungeons and Dragons. He'd hate Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, that's unfortunate, because Dungeons and Dragons is cool. So,
look, I love the guy, but we don't agree on everything. But with the Ents, he is inventing a fantasy creature whole cloth. There's not, to my knowledge, anything else like it in the piecemeal, like North European mythology that comes down to us. I couldn't say there's nothing like it in any mythology. I don't know, but I definitely think like it fits so well. There's so much tree imagery in Tolkien's canon that the idea that there should be a race of tree people,
you gotta have that in there.
Yeah, you gotta do that.
You gotta do that. You already had trees that were moving around last time. You might as well go the distance. He mentions, so you said this is a later draft that he added the Ents in?
No, this is when he first sat down to write this chapter. So the first draft, the Ents come to him. And then, of course, he does edits and makes it all fit together.
So he went back and added the sightings of Entwives.
Well, we don't know. I think so.
And we don't know if they're Entwives, but it sure sounds like something like that.
I don't know.
I guess he didn't say Entwives. He said like moving trees or humanoid trees or something.
Sam saw a humanoid tree moving. It could have been an Ent. Could have been an Entwife. Could have been just one of the trees that becomes a little too Entish.
Yeah, you gotta nip that in the bud,
No, more of that.
You need to because then they'll realize what we've been doing to the planet.
I haven't been doing shit. I don't own a handful of dirt. I'm a renter. I didn't do anything to any trees. Okay, I can be an ally of the trees. Hey, look, Treebeard, set me up in a cave. I'll live there. I don't need to cut down trees. We'll pour cement. We can, live like the rest of the world. Just big cement buildings that look like prisons. That's a fight I always have with some of my friends from other countries, especially my Indian friends. They're always like, "Why do you build these houses where like everyone can hear everything that's going on in the house? You need thick concrete walls." like we have in India. And I'm like, see, I don't know. That just sounds like a prison to me, guys. And they're like, what?
Yeah, I think the Gravy Man lived. I don't know if it was concrete, but they're big like I don't know how to describe it. It's like my school was made out of them. They're like big white blocks.
Yeah.
Like
No.
thick,
One of
yeah.
my
Like
college dorms was that.
yeah, it felt
Yeah.
like we were going into like a compound or a fortress or something.
Yeah.
Which, if that's what you're going for, good for you. That's cool. I mean, but I wouldn't want to like live in that all the time. You know. I guess also like in between my house and my neighbor's house, there's like a empty space. It's real hard for sound to travel through my walls and then across the yard and then through their walls.
Well, no, they're worried about like the family within hearing what's going on. That has nothing to do with why we're here. We've wandered, but the point is, I could have a tree friend because I'm not a wasteful heathen like you.
Meanwhile, I'm just throwing plastic directly into the ocean. You know, I save
From
up all my
Kansas.
trash. Yeah, I save up all my trash. I get in the car. Put it all in the U-Haul. Actually, and I drive for 3 days straight to get to the ocean. Just dump it all in.
Do you want to summarize?
Yeah, let's do the summary. So, we've got Pippin and Merry. They've escaped into the Fangorn forest, and um, they they describe it as dim and stuffy rather than just like dark and evil the way Mirkwood was. Yeah, Legolas, your forest sucks even worse than Fangorn. So they start drinking the water of a tree and talking about how all they've got is Lembas,
They're
and they're
drinking
gonna need.
water from a river.
Oh, I thought it was
the
from.
Entwash.
I thought it was coming out of like roots of a tree.
No, this is just the Entwash. It's a
So
river
that's
that
not as cool. All
runs through
right, you're not
Fangorn.
drinking directly from a tree. That's
A tree will come to hand them water directly.
that is true. So they see some yellow light coming from the sun above, and they're like, and it starts to like fade, or like a cloud goes in front of it, or whatever, and they're like, Pippin said something like, I almost feel that I like this forest. And then they hear a voice that's like, I almost feel I dislike you both. But
Oh yeah.
but,
Oh, you
yeah.
almost like the forest? Well, maybe I almost don't hate you.
Yeah, there you go. So
Uh,
Treebeard is that voice, and he wants them to turn around slowly and
Hands up.
undress. No, I'm kidding. Hands up, yeah. Not that you can do anything. Like, he was like, that's interesting. You're not orcs. I was just going to trample you, and then if I it was because of their voices. That's the reason. He was like, if I hadn't heard your voices, I would have just assumed you were orcs. I would have trampled you, and then I would have been like, whoopsie, when I went to scrape you off my tree feet.
Which are both 7-toed.
Yeah. I don't even know why you need toes in that case, but you know what? You do you. I'm not
Well,
going to
you
tell
don't
you how to
bend
tree.
well, so you got to grip the rocks so you don't fall.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
They describe his eyes in great detail.
Yeah, this is one of the rare, like, super detailed physical descriptions we get of a fantasy creature. I assume because no one would have any idea what this was like otherwise. Maybe you should have done this with elves.
Maybe.
But
I guess just describing how hot they are.
A large, man-like, almost troll-like figure, at least 14 foot high, very sturdy, with a tall head and hardly any neck. Whether it was clad in stuff like green and gray bark, or whether that was its hide, was difficult to say. At any rate, the arms, at a short distance from the trunk, were not wrinkled, but covered with a brown, smooth skin. The large feet had 7 toes each. The lower part of the long face was covered with a sweeping gray beard, bushy, almost twiggy at the roots, thin and mossy at the ends. But at the moment, yeah. I don't know what Shai's doing back
I
there.
don't know what she's doing either. That
No. I don't know when that happened. I'm not going to edit it out. If you're not focusing on Treebeard, that was a test actually. Okay, if you're not focusing on Treebeard, if you're focusing on the person screaming in the background of my audio, you failed. So I hope you remember everything I just said, because I'm going to go on as if nothing happened. But at the moment, the hobbits noted little but the eyes.
Yeah.
These deep eyes were now surveying them, slow and solemn, but very penetrating. They were brown, shot with green light. Often afterwards, Pippin tried to describe them. He tried to describe his first impression of them. One felt as if there was an enormous well behind them, filled up with ages of memory, long, slow, and steady thinking. But their surface was sparkling with the present. It actually goes on, but I'm going to stop there. That's the bulk of the eyes. There was one note I have, and this is going to be kind of another theme running through this chapter. The gender of nature in mythology. One of the things Tolkien is very explicit about, and I think we have talked about this before, but I'm going to mention it one more time. Mary refers to the sun as she. And that is unusual. And I believe in most mythologies we still have the sun, if it is gendered, is male.
Yeah. Big manly sun.
And in Tolkien's universe, the sun is explicitly female.
I'm offended.
It is.
He changed the genders. That's not right. We need to go in and fix that.
Tolkien went
for in the hunt for Smeagol. Someone needs to refer to the sun as a male.
Yeah. But in Tolkien's mythology, what the sun is a magical ship glowing with the light of the fruit of one of the 2 trees, piloted by a female entity, I believe a Maiar.
Shit, how do I get that job? Sounds awesome.
You want to drive the sun around?
Fuck yeah.
That sounds so boring.
Do you not want to drive the sun around?
Not at all. First off, no, I'm a moon guy.
What is the moon in
similar?
Is it also driven by a ship?
Yes.
Is it also a female?
I believe the moon is male. Let me double check that.
Yeah. Big moon energy.
It is guided by Telion, the Maya who guides the moon. And he is male, yes. Whereas Ariane is the Maya that guides the sun, and she is female.
Now, when you say ship, is this like a pirate ship? But
yeah, we're talking like steampunk airship. Yeah.
Fuck yeah! You don't think that's awesome? You want to fly that thing around?
For the moon. I'm not
for the moon. All right.
Look, this is nothing about this preference for the moon has nothing to do with gender. If we're talking like Wicca drawing down the moon, I'm still all about the moon. The moon is the superior heavenly body. I understand, like, scientifically,
all
it's
the
all
light
the
comes
sun
from the sun, and all the energy of the earth comes from the sun.
Yeah, I understand that. I just don't like it.
Okay. All right. I guess as long as you're aware that you're making the wrong decision,
I'm not making the wrong
can...
decision. I'm not wishing the sun away. I'm just saying.
Well, that's good because we'd all die. Now, if we
I
wish the
know.
moon away,
I said I
we'll probably be
understand.
fine.
If we wish the moon away, we would probably be fine, but we would be the lesser for it. Like, that's... I would much rather walk under moonlight than sunlight.
Well, that's just because you're ginger.
I can't say it's not. Maybe it is. It is actually... I talk about this with a therapist, Nathaniel. This is actually one of my triggers, is bright sunlight. I have a harder time moving throughout the world in bright sunlight. I prefer to drive at night or when it's raining.
Did
schedule...
they say get some shades?
They did. So these are actually transition lenses. But I have shade. I have sunglasses and a hat.
Yeah.
But I have to mitigate it because the sun is too much. It's just too much. Look, I know Tolkien likes it. I know it's a divine being. I know it technically is the reason we all exist. But it's too much. And I'm not sorry about that.
It's got on a weird tangent.
I expressed a simple preference, and you made me explain it.
So you would like the Fangorn Forest then?
Yes.
Hardly any sunlight gets through there.
Brother,
it's
I
dim.
would like Mirkwood.
Well, no one likes Mirkwood. Don't lie. So we're at Treebeard. We're at Fangorn Forest, Ben.
Yes.
He decided he wasn't going to trample them to death. So now he needs them to explain what they are. And don't be hasty. Don't be hasty, Ben.
You look like a hasty people. I don't want you to be hasty. How do you feel about the sun?
First, I need you to explain what the sun is in your language, though. Yeah, this felt like a very Tolkien chapter. Like, there's a lot of like, let me tell you about the language and how all that, and it's like, oh my god, this is exactly what he wanted to write this book for.
Literally what he wanted to write.
All that shit with Aragorn and chasing the orcs and whatnot, that was just filler to get to here.
I agree, and as I get older, I appreciate it. I guess people find me boring too. Is that what you're going to tell me, Nate?
Well, you do like the moon, so
everybody likes the moon. Everybody cool likes the moon.
So, yeah.
Who likes the sun? Boring ass Christians. You know who likes the moon? Naked witches.
Yeah, but they're not all hot naked witches.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's not what it's about. It's about freedom.
It should be. I think we can all agree. So, yeah, he doesn't know what a hobbit is, and
because they're not in the lists.
In the lists, yeah, he starts listing off all the creatures.
I did love that. I love Treebeard. He's. I told Shy, it's like listening to her talk sometimes, where it just goes on and into strange places. Like this, I shouldn't talk, I guess. Maybe that's why we're married. But no, I'll give you the short version. He's like he's basically doing this like hobbits. Like one of like somebody who forgets how to spell would start doing the alphabet like A B C D E F G H I J. There we go. It's after
yeah.
I. No, they're like he's like, okay, hobbits. Learn now the lore of the living creatures. First name the four, the free peoples, eldest of all the elf children, dwarf delver, ant the earthborn, old as mountains, man the mortal, master of horses. Skip a little, beaver the builder, buck the leaper, bear the bee hunter, boar the fighter. No, eagle in the eyrie, ox in the pasture. skip a little, the roseate spoonbill.
So why do hobbits get left out of every list?
You want the in-universe reason or the real reason?
Both.
In-universe reason, they are notoriously shy. They keep to themselves. Hobbits are an offshoot of men.
Did Morgoth not have hobbits in his time?
No.
When did they come around?
They're men. They are technically men.
Right.
So they would have come with the first awakening of men. And they would have been a tribe of men who presumably just sort of separated and highly valued being left alone and peace and just sort of, they're chiefly concerned with the growing of food and the eating of it. They don't like war. They don't want to do anything. And the histories of this world are by and large written about wars, which the hobbits did not participate in any way in. There's also other we'll encounter as we go through. I think it's in Return of the King. There are other men as well that like live in the forest and don't
What?
talk to anybody. Yeah.
What?
They guide Theoden to Pelennor Field, I believe, because a host of Sauron's trying to block him. And yeah, they're just kind of a people who are not super duper concerned with stuff. It's kind of like why we know quite a bit about, say, Indigenous American history, but not nearly enough, not at the granular detail that we know European history in the same period of time. We don't have lists of names and leaders and stuff like that.
So you're saying the hobbits didn't write it down, and they should have been writing it down, or at the very least been talking to trees.
Well, they talked to trees with their fists.
They did. I guess they did slaughter trees and then burn their corpses in front of their friends as a message to stay the fuck away from my hedge.
If you push a hobbit into a corner, as those trees did, literally, you're gonna get the horns. But yeah, it's and I guess part of it is, they just sort of became what they became. They got smaller, they got hairy feet, as you do, and they just sort of faded out of the memory of the world because until the ring, they did not take any part in any major world events. At least major world events from the perspective of the people writing the histories. And history just wasn't important to them. Not much changes in their lives. Other than genealogy, they really didn't care. When you don't have great societal upheavals every couple generations, there's not much to record. It's like, yeah, a good crop this season. Worst crop this season.
Well, I mean, the birth of the Sackville Bagginses, that's pretty upheaving to Hobbit society.
Relatively new development, though. Treebeard wouldn't have known about that.
So what's the official reason?
Hobbits come out of nowhere.
And Tolkien forgot
intended to be part of this mythology, really. So the real reason is the famous story. Tolkien's grading papers one day, and a thought pops into his head. He jots it down. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And at that point, it was just sort of words, like the sounds he was playing with. He didn't know what a hobbit was. He develops the idea a little bit more. He writes a children's story, mostly for his own children. He types it up. He shares it with some colleagues, gets floated to a publisher. Publisher likes it. They publish The Hobbit. It's a hit. And for The Hobbit, he borrowed from the existing secondary world he'd been sort of playing with his whole life. And the existing secondary world he'd been playing with, which becomes the Middle Earth sort of mythology and canon, is more based on the Poetic Edda, the sagas of the old, northern kings and heroes. And he's even trying to copy the style of those at times. Like some of these texts exist in alliterative verse, which is how Old English and Old Norse poetry is usually structured. It's alliterative, not rhyming. And that's really what he's trying to do. He's trying to recreate the texts he's studying with his own spin on it. And he borrows characters he's invented for that to make the Hobbit's world feel bigger and more fleshed out. And then after the success of The Hobbit, he's like, oh, maybe I could get my secondary world published. And he sends them some of these materials he's been working on that are structured very much like ancient foreign texts.
And they're like, what? What is this?
We were kind of hoping for more Hobbit. What is Baron and or Luthien? What is why is the devil chaining a man to a mountain and watching his child destroy his life? What's this about? Where's Bilbo? I want more adventures with with dwarves that sing. And so he reaches a compromise, which is a sequel to The Hobbit, very different in tone for a different audience, which is The Lord of the Rings, where he is able to combine more of his epic, I don't want to say poetry, but more of his like epic mythology with hobbits. And so hobbits are kind of, I don't know how he feels about it by the end, but it starts out as kind of a concession to the publisher. They're not really supposed to be there. They're this weird cartoony thing for kids that he invented. And they're just a footnote in the history of the elves.
Wow.
So yeah, that's why Treebeard. And they
don't worry, guys. The next one is the Age of Man. That covers you too.
Yeah, they don't get much much shine in that either. Because according to Tolkien, like canonically, if you care about that, hobbits still exist. They just don't want to talk to us.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
But yeah, he even makes a joke out of this because he knows it doesn't fit well. Like he knows the tone of Lord of the Rings is like super different than that.
Yeah,
you
had Bill the Troll, and now suddenly trolls are...
And the hobbits are like totally anachronistic to the rest of this world. They drink coffee. They have a postal service. They have like good china. They're old British. They're old British people living in the middle of this like Viking age, Iron Age society of war and death. And he knows they're totally anachronistic and they don't fit, and it's silly. And so he even makes a joke about it in this chapter where Mary says, "We always seem to have got left out of the old lists and the old stories. Yet we've been about for quite a long time. We're hobbits. Why not make a new line?" said Pippin. "Half-grown hobbits, the hole dwellers. Put us in amongst the four, next to man, the big people, and you've got it." And that is essentially what happens in the Silmarillion. They get a little footnote. It's like, hobbits are men. That's what the elven author of the book of the Silmarillion wound up gathering from this.
Yeah. I guess that's what I would do too. Like, what the fuck are these? I guess I'll just kind of kind of make something up.
There's also, I think also hastily added, because I'm a little confused on it. I've actually been digging through the letters to see if I can get an answer to this. The way Treebeard describes it is the elves are the first, let's say the first beings who are not Ainur, who have language, that awaken. So
Okay.
the elves wake up, and then the elves, Treebeard says something like, in those days, the elves wanted to talk to everything. They wanted to know everything about everything.
You never shut up.
And they wake up the trees, and they teach the trees how to talk. And I'm guessing from this, or from a seed planted early on, the Ents are awoken.
Yeah.
Because
Sounds like the
Treebeard,
elves wouldn't stop talking to him, and it woke him up. And they're like, well, I guess while you're awake, let me teach you how to have language so we can talk more.
I have a philosophical question here that I'm sure a Tolkien scholar could probably answer. Eldest of all the elf children, dwarf the delver, dark are his houses, Ent the earthborn, old as mountains, man the mortal, master of horses. If the eldest of all are the elf children, are the Ents? Why are the Ents? Why is there such emphasis placed on the Ents' age?
Or, on them in general.
Well, this is an Ent poem, so
Yeah, I know. It'd be really awkward if they're like, oh, we're not one of the important species.
It would be humbling.
Absolutely not.
There's another thing that comes up in the introductions, and that is the emphasis on true names.
Yeah.
Did you pick up on that?
I saw that in Paper Mario. If someone knows your name, they can like take over your form and whatnot. So you have to bust in and get the letter P so you can spell dupless, and that breaks the spell.
Yeah, that does happen in Paper Mario. In The Lord of the Rings, one of the things we mentioned in earlier chapters, I think at the end of Fellowship of the Ring, is the special attention paid to the fact that these orcs have an S, and they think it's probably for Saruman, because Sauron does not let people refer to him by name.
Yeah.
And there is a notion in, like, say, I don't know where this comes from exactly, but there's a notion in some, like, rites of exorcism that if you learn a demon's true name, or that you need to learn a demon's true name to fully expel it, that you can bind something if you know its name, that gives you power over it. And Treebeard obviously subscribes to this, because he tells the hobbits, like, whoa, you guys are telling me a lot about yourself. You gotta, like, I'm flattered, but you gotta be careful with that. You can't just go around telling people your real names.
Yeah, I'll open up a credit card in your name. We don't have social security numbers. It's super easy right now.
No, and Mary gives him his full Christian name, his social security number, his mother's maiden name.
Yeah, I'm Meridoc Brandybuck.
His credit score. Yeah, he's...
Yeah, and Treebeard's like, oh, shit. All right, well, I guess I have to now.
No, he's not. He says explicitly, I'm not going to tell you my name. And he says, for one thing, it would take a long while. My name is growing all the time.
I meant that he got all this information and
to steal their identity.
Yeah, now I have to steal your identity. You gave it all, so I have to teach you a lesson. Natural consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, when Mary comes back, he's only got one house now.
It's still a mansion, but like one of the smaller mansions.
The other ones just say property of Treebeard. He doesn't live in them. He just wants you to know he has it. Yeah, for one thing, it would take a long time. My name is growing all the time, and I've lived a very long time. So my name is like a story. Real names tell you the story of the things they belong to in my language.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were still talking, Treebeard. I'm sorry. I've just I spent all night running away from orcs.
You're fine. You drank the ant water. I know you're awake. So
shit, you saw that?
Yeah, this river is just a flowing stream of Celsius energy drink. So, not sponsored by Celsius, but consider it. Consider an Entwash flavor brand partnership.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing, and I've heard from people who spoke to Tolkien, and this will not surprise you, Nate, that one of Tolkien's favorite things in the world to do was try to determine the etymology of everyone's name and every name of everything he came across.
Oh, wow. I gotta go. I gotta wake up early in the morning. I know it's only 6 o'clock.
It was actually like a game he played with young philologists of like, now what do you think that means? Why do you think that? Like, what? Let's.
God, it's the thing from the Futurological Congress.
I told you.
Oh God!
You need to, except in reverse. Except in reverse, they're trying to figure out what it meant in the past. Like our names have meanings. Like, Benjamin is a Hebrew thing, son of the right hand, favorite son. Whatever.
Nate means something like God of all creation, Super Chad. Yeah.
And he would like to do that because as you start getting into, especially the stuff that's not been written down, some of these place names that have persisted for generations are the only clues you've got. Especially in the old world, especially in like Europe or Britain and Scandinavia. Like some of these towns are named, like the name is remembered, but it refers to a god that is forgotten, and that's very weird and cool to me. But I can see how some people find it tedious if they're not, big brain.
Yeah. Go read American Gods.
He tells us Treebeard talks to him a bit, and he's like, that young Saruman down at Isengard, he's been getting up to a lot of shenanigans. A lot of genocidal shenanigans.
Yeah, okay, so first of all, he knows Gandalf, and he says Gandalf is the only wizard who cares about trees. What about Radagast? He let a bird shit directly on his face, and he didn't wipe it off in the movies.
I'm going to ask you a rather profound question right now that you may have to think hard about. Is a bird a tree?
It depends. In Fangorn Forest, everything is trees. So
even the birds.
Perhaps there are flying bird trees out there. Because they mentioned that this isn't a place where animals would probably hang out. Probably because they're getting stomped to death by trees.
Yeah.
Does Radagast not care about trees? I thought he was a nature-loving hippie type. Is he just
I think
like animals?
I think
and
he
weed?
likes. Now, this is where it's going to get interesting. I think he likes animals. I also think Radagast is kind of dumb.
I mean, a bit, yeah. Though I only have Saruman's word for it, so.
When even Gandalf is like, he's not that bad.
Yeah, maybe he shouldn't have been sent on this really important mission, but like, he needs something to do.
The Valar have a really bad track record of knowing what the mortals need.
I know what we need. We need a guy who will smoke a bunch of weed and get bird shit on his face.
Well, when he was a spirit floating around, he didn't smoke weed.
You don't know that. I can't believe that.
We didn't know putting him in a body was going to have that effect on him. And that is, honestly, that does strike me as the kind of detached shit an angel would think. So
Well,
judgmental,
we really fucked
so
this one up.
judgmental of all the people, being like, oh, why can't they stop sinning? Why can't they stop sinning? And then they get a body and they're like, oh, this feels amazing.
Yeah, that does check out.
Yeah, no wonder they're sinning all the time.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's like it was made for this.
Yeah. Who put
Why
all
do
this temptation in me? What is this?
Why would God create addictive substances that perfectly fit into the pleasure pathways of
yeah. I thought you were just gonna say, why would God create a dick? And I'm like, that too.
No.
It's just there. So yeah, so they're like, yeah, we knew Gandalf, we were his friends and companions, and Treebeard's like, oh, well then, I guess I'll continue the whole not smashing you thing. So yeah. But you're talking about him like he's gone. And they're like, yeah, Gandalf is dead. And Treebeard's just like, come now, I don't know what to say. let's move on. I don't know what you need here. That sucks, dude.
So there's our first change from, well, not our first change from the movie, because our first change from the movie is Treebeard doesn't cinematically save them from the Nork and sweep them up and call them orcs and squeeze them a little and then tell them the White Wizard will know what to do.
Oh yeah, no, he's already like, man, that Saruman's doing some shit down there.
Yeah, Treebeard already wants to fight Saruman.
Yeah,
he already knows that Saruman has killed all the trees.
I did not remember that. The movie definitely supplanted that memory in my brain, because I remember watching the movie going like, yeah, that's exactly how that went down. 100%. They had to like trick him into walking down to Saruman, and then they're like, oh, what the fuck is this? We gotta stop this.
Well, I definitely think this is one of those chapters you're reading for the first time, you don't know anything about Lord of the Rings. You're like, okay, this is a lot of detail that feels like it's never going to come up again. Do I need to know everything about Treebeard and his Holmes and his Badrooms and his but when you read it a second time, you're like, oh shit, this is all the side stuff nobody ever talks about. Treebeard's talking about it at length. This is one of the most important chapters in all of the books, including the Silmarillion. And
wow,
it's surprisingly short. Like, I could listen to Treebeard talk about this all day. It is a nerdy thing, though. I don't know how many people ever read Lord of the Rings for a second time. But
we're going back to Treebeard's house now to talk more, and we're not going to be hasty. So they go back there, and I think on the way, I think Pippin narks on Celeborn, like, why do you warn us not to come into your forest? That was weird, right? Like, you said this forest sucks and it's full of like demons or something. I don't know. I can't remember. You just like definitely don't go in there. It's a shithole. And Treebeard's like, wow, he said that? What dick. See, I would have told you the same thing had you come through my forest first. Like, don't go into Lorien. It's like,
there's a bunch of crazy elves there that are going to murder you.
Yeah, a bunch of crazy elves are going to murder you in there.
It's like, it's just that weird thing about people not liking people breaking into their house, you know?
And then he talks about how some of the Ents are becoming tree-ish, and they're getting more sleepy and not moving as much. But then every now and then a tree is getting more Entish, so that's interesting. He talks about the darkness, Ben. Is that Morgoth he's talking about?
I believe that is Morgoth.
Yeah, it sure sounds like Morgoth. He talks about how the elves woke the trees, which you already said. Talks about, was this all one big forest back in the day? Because it sounds like he knows about the old forest, and maybe it was like connected somehow to this one.
I think so. There are several forests mentioned in the old world, and he'll mention
Yeah, he does.
He'll mention most of them.
He mentions a whole lot of forests that are conspicuously not on the map anymore, Ben. There's where once there was a forest, there's just this really big ocean.
Yeah, he says those are under the waves now.
So they were all part of Beleriand? Is that that's how
Yeah.
you say it? Yeah, I picked up on that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, he talks about the coming of...
Himself, because he wants those sexy ant wives, am I right?
I do not doubt there is some shadow of the great darkness lying away north. So the great darkness is Morgoth.
Yeah.
And the north he is referring to, Morgoth had his fortress in Angband, which is in the extreme north of Middle Earth. The interesting thing is he talks about the great darkness coming and then passing away over the sea or fled into the far valleys. So, going on memory here, I believe Morgoth should already have been... Morgoth is already in Middle Earth when the Ents would have awoken. He would have gone away. The Valar come and they capture him and take him back to Valinor. He lives as a prisoner in Valinor for quite some time. This is in the time of the two trees. And then he slowly earns more privileges for good behavior.
Okay.
The Valar are really naive.
Like they're like, all right, you went to bed on time, so that's a gold star. And
You
if
haven't
get
incited
50 of those,
you haven't recited rebellion in 7 ages, so we're gonna let you have your own house. You don't have to live in the underworld anymore. Now, don't fuck this up, Morgoth. I will not. Where are the Noldor, by the way? I'd like to talk to them about their gems and how, they should keep those safe because people might want them. And maybe you need weapons for that. And by the way, I think your brother's trying to take your throne.
Just normal stuff like
Normal
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so he does that, and eventually he escapes, kills the two trees, or he escapes, comes back, kills the two trees, steals the Silmarils, and flees back to Middle Earth. So I believe that could be the coming, at least one of the comings of the Great Darkness, as it passes over the sea and comes back. He's referencing the events of the Silmarillion like sideways, and it's not clear. And this is to Tolkien's credit, and I think it's on purpose. It's not clear how much of the full story Treebeard really has.
Yeah, he talks about the 9 that were lost, and then he's definitely talking about Sauron fighting against the Sea People.
Yeah, the Bronze Age collapse.
Yeah.
They were probably the Númenóreans.
Could be both. You don't know.
We don't. The Sea Peoples could have been the Númenóreans. No one knows.
That's why they were so efficient in combat.
I think, they had elf steel. No, I think he's talking about the Númenóreans, because Sauron goes to war, but he doesn't just go to... I was a little confused by the Sea People, because it's like, how would Treebeard see this? So the Númenóreans are a sea people. They are islanders. But they didn't fight Sauron alone. I don't think they didn't fight Sauron alone. So
no, because the War of the Last Alliance.
Well, the War of the Last Alliance was the last time Sauron was defeated, right?
Yeah.
He was defeated before that.
What?
This is where it gets confusing.
What? He was defeated before that?
Yeah, so Sauron gets captured.
Oh, I guess they captured him, and then he's... Oh, I thought that was part of his plan, to get captured and then be like, hey, you know what?
He surrenders.
Just go fight God.
Well, he surrenders, and he allows the Numenorians to take him prisoner.
Wow, so the Numenorians kick his ass and he has to surrender.
Yeah.
And they're like, this guy seems trustworthy.
He convinces the aging king,
You want me to fight God? Hell yeah.
Well, he convinces them that, you're aging and dying, and these elves you're best buds with live forever. You ever wonder why that is?
What about you?
Me? Why do I live forever? Oh, gee. I am a servant of the one true God Morgoth.
I think
you
just
could
to
be
safe,
too.
We should dissect you and see how you work and see if maybe we can get that to work for us.
No. See, what you got to do here, the one true God Morgoth, he's the guy you want to talk to. He's the guy that's got all the power.
Okay, let's go talk to him. Where is he?
On the other side of the doors of night, guarded by those pesky gods.
So that's not happening, is what you're telling me.
No, that's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is build yourself a god missile, buddy, because we're going to war.
You know what?
Ready the Evangelions.
I'm convinced. Let's do it.
But unfortunately, the Lance of Longinus didn't exist yet, so they failed.
So, Treebeard gives Merry and Pippin that good juice to get them going.
Treebeard does like the most overt magic of anyone in the entire book so far. He's like making stuff glow, making it glow different colors. He's like, the Ents, because they're trees, the only food they take is water.
Yeah, Merry and Pippin are like, God, we're gonna need some food. And he's like, I've got water. Is that gonna do it for you? It's gonna do it for you. I got this.
Well, he has magic nourishing water that will make them not hungry, but they're hobbits, so they eat the lembas bread anyway.
Yeah.
The precious lembas bread.
What are the odds we're gonna need that again anytime soon?
Well, yeah, I guess they're probably thinking, look, there's two outcomes here. Either these trees are going to defeat Saruman, a wizard of untold power, or they're not, and we're all going to die. So I'm not going to die hungry. Eat the lembas bread.
Good call. I don't want Sauron to loot our corpses and then get free bread. That's not happening. That's my bread. I'm taking that with me. So they tell their whole story to Treebeard, and they have to jump around because Treebeard will keep interrupting them. Can you imagine how annoying it would be if someone just kept interrupting you while you're trying to tell a story?
Well, as long as they're interrupting with sage wisdom, I don't think I'd mind.
Yeah, like interrupting, talking about those sexy Ent wives.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me about that Shire.
Some of the stuff I have to clip out because it's so explicit. How much do you really think I'm going to leave in you calling the Rohirrim horse? I'll be honest, when we're recording, I didn't even realize how many times you said it until I heard your track. Where you're just quietly
solid Patreon.
You're just quietly like, I hope that means they create more horses and not the horses. I'm like, thank you, Nate. That's gonna make people want to listen to the show. Let's keep imagining.
Deal. So, where are those Entwives? That long ago, we had Entwives who they tended gardens while we tended forests because they liked like pretty things and the stuff that was useful, like food, and this is really, really weird. And then we got separated, and we used to go out for them, and then one day we just didn't find them. We lost them. They're gone. And I thought maybe they might like that Shire. Keep an eye out for me.
Yeah, I think we
haven't had Entlings in eons.
I believe it's just Entings.
Entings.
But yeah, I think the difference between the Ents. Oh, he does have the famous quote. So there's a famous quote here where they're talking about Saruman, where he says he has a mind of metal and wheels, and he does not care for growing things except as far as they serve him for the moment. That is
Yeah.
an oft quoted line. People who love the Lord of the Rings, like Tolkien, I don't think could ever have understood why the hippie movement loved Lord of the Rings so much. But this is the one weird place where this weird old Catholic man crosses over with them, and it's this environmentalist message, this anti-industry message, and people love the "he has a mind of metal and wheels" quote. You'll see that a lot.
Wow. Well, he also mentions that he used to talk to Saruman, and he would tell Saruman all kinds of things, and Saruman wouldn't say shit. Really, really not cool of him. And he thinks that Saruman just kind of used him. And then he starts getting worked up. He's talking about how Saruman did something to the orcs, maybe bred them with men, he didn't know. But now those orcs are destroying stuff. Saruman's betrayed them. He's destroying the forest. I do not remember this at all. I do not remember that he already knew, and he was pissed,
Yeah.
and he wants to get the other Ents to go stop this Saruman.
Well, there's a thing. I think this is my main problem with Peter Jackson. And the Hobbit movies are the worst.
Oh
But
yeah,
it's even there in the Lord of the Rings. Is I've made this comparison before, but I think the Lord of the Rings story has a, a kind of philosophical kinship with like Star Trek The Next Generation, in that people are basically good and the problems tend to come from outside. Like in Star Trek The Next Generation, humanity has solved scarcity, they've solved greed. Everybody has everything they could want, everybody has anything they could ever want. And now they work just to have fun and to better themselves and to learn more and create more things. That's kind of what Tolkien imagines people would do if all their needs were met. And he kind of thinks the people who have endless greed are touched by evil. They're not the ordinary people. And
and their parents didn't love them enough.
and what Peter Jackson does that kind of undermines that is he inserts internal conflict in places where it doesn't belong. Conflict between Aragorn and Boromir. Conflict between Treebeard and Merry and Pippin. Treebeard wants to do the right thing. He's a confused tree man who doesn't do anything hastily. So he does need a little bit of a kick in the ass to remind him, like, oh yeah, I got to do that thing. But he doesn't argue with them. He doesn't argue with Merry and Pippin. They're basically on the same page. They don't. Treebeard. Peter Jackson wants to have this theme running through Lord of the Rings of people saying, "This is not my fight," and somebody else being like, "No, it's the world's fight. We're all connected. Everything matters." Oh my God, you're right. I just realized that now because you said it. And it has to be that way because that's not the point of the story, and there's nothing in the plot that's actually going to make the people realize that. Like when Boromir falls and he's like, oh no, now the White City's going to fall. And Aragorn's like, no, I guess I care about people now because I watched one die.
Yeah, that checks out.
That's where.
Yeah, when he's really motivated by getting some from a hot elf of some description.
Well, that's the other thing too, is like Elrond also hates humans.
Yeah, he was there when the whatever of man, whatever.
I was there when the race of men was half me.
Yeah, you are half human, and You did benefit greatly from the ring surviving, and
You fostered
in the
the Kings of
movie, you
Arnor.
could have just shoved him into the fire if it was that important to you. You were guarding the only entrance in and out of that room.
Well, and again, we have that problem of like the movie. People will tell you, and they're right. It's the award-winningest movie of all time. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm saying it's a bad. It makes the story worse. It's
It
more
changes it a lot.
It's more cinematic, and it's more emotionally evocative, but it at the expense of the story itself, because that scene with Elrond and Isildur is already so confused. You've character assassinated Isildur. He's
Yeah.
evil now, and Elrond is good. Elrond would have destroyed the ring, but would he?
Well, he had the opportunity. He could have just tripped Isildur as he tried to walk out of the room.
Yeah, but my thing is, can anyone knowingly destroy the ring? No.
Doesn't seem like it.
Right? No. Because if Elrond was there
Even
the day...
awesome Frodo couldn't do it.
If Elrond was there the day
Spoilers.
The race of men failed, that implies that Elrond thinks he personally could destroy the ring. So why doesn't he go?
Again, why didn't he just throw them both in the volcano?
Yeah.
He's right there in the movie. They're at Mount Doom in the movie.
Well, you could say he doesn't want to kill somebody, and that's valid. But
well, you just ask for forgiveness later. It's Christian God.
But I guess that's my thing. Is like the opportunity to destroy the ring has now presented itself. Elrond, you could walk your happy ass into Mordor and destroy the ring. You could send if that's the logic, why don't we just send an elf to destroy the ring? Why don't we send 9 Legolas's to go destroy the ring? And the answer is
too much Orlando Bloom. I'm sorry.
Well, the answer is because it would corrupt them quicker. The hobbits are the best ones to carry the ring because they're not powerful and they don't want anything. And even they are going to fall. So that's the thing. Like Tolkien wouldn't have made that decision because he would be thinking about the big picture. He's not thinking about what the scene needs. He's not thinking about the emotional beat of the movie. He's thinking about what the overall story needs at that moment. And that's where Peter Jackson's little changes start to add up to, yeah, this is a great emotional thing and it looks great and it's fine. I think that's ultimately why he failed with The Hobbit, though.
Yeah.
Is because, A, he stretched it, and in stretching it, he had to add a lot more of these little conflict moments. And the more conflict you add to Lord of the Rings, the less it feels like Lord of the Rings, because the conflict is external, not internal. I'm sorry. I know people get mad when I pick on the movies because they love the movies. And I used to love them too.
And Peter Jackson gets hurt. He listens to talking about Tolkien. He's a big fan.
At this point,
every time we mention him, he's like, God, guys, can you just lay off me?
At this point,
I did my best.
For Peter Jackson's like union busting and corporate shilling alone, I would smack him in the face. I don't really care what Peter Jackson thinks about anything. I don't care about his feelings, certainly. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings movies were good. It's just they kind of it's at the expense of it's at the expense of the story's message. You create great scenes at the expense of the overall message.
Yeah, and he changed a part of this chapter. We're getting towards
the end. Changed a lot of this chapter.
Well, yeah, but definitely the end. So, okay, so Treebeard talks about he's calling a moot, an Ent moot. Of the original 3 Ents, one is a tree, and another one got wounded and his entire herd was killed. Oh yeah, they herd trees. That's their thing. And so he pieced out. So there's only Treebeard of his original generation, but I guess there's a bunch of other slightly less old but still old Ents. And he's going to try and get Gen Z involved in Ent politics. So he's gonna get.
They're really hasty, these Gen Z ants. They have no attention span. This guy, he answered a question before I was even finished asking it.
Yeah, that's some pretty. That's like blasphemy, dude. Skibbity toilet. Come on, what the fuck even is that? I don't
love
understand.
that that's the only
I
thing
don't-
you know.
That's all I know. That's all I care to know, Ben. That's all I care to know. So,
by the time Nate knows a term, it is well and truly dead.
Thank God. Is that dead? Is that dead?
I think that's been
thank
dead.
God.
I think that's only been persisted by older
Thank
people who think it's silly.
Jesus. All right. Yeah, I get you, Treebeard. I'm also old as shit. Oh yeah, all the Entwife gardens went to waste. They're called like the Brown Lands now. They commanded things. That the commanding things that checks out. Anyway,
is that a wife joke?
yeah. She's not gonna listen to this episode. So we're
relatable good. Humor.
Yeah. So, as he goes, we're going to the Entmoot. So where is this Entmoot, Ben? It's at the Durndingle.
I wrote. I don't know if you can see my note.
I cannot.
It's not focusing, but it says, "Yeah, Nate's gonna have a field day with this."
Oh, so yeah, they start having their moot, and after what's probably several hours, Pippin and Merry are starting to like collapse from fatigue, and Treebeard is like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. You guys are really hasty. I was just saying hello. We haven't even gotten to the part where we need to go fight Saruman. You can go if you want. You can go with Bregalad. He's the guy who interrupted an elder once before he even finished asking his 3-page question.
Well, can I just say, like, Bregalad winds up being like one of the most emotionally relatable characters in the whole book.
He laughs a lot. And he's pissed that Saruman killed all of his tree herd. His herd was close to Isengard, and they're dead. So he's already made up his mind. Regardless of what these other Ents do, he's going in, and he's going to kick Saruman's ass.
That the Ents, he loves rowan trees. And the Ents planted rowan trees to try to make the Entwives happy, because rowan trees bear fruit.
Yeah, we always try to do things to please our wives. It's never enough, Bregalad. I'm sorry. It seems to be the same with every single species. It's just never enough. The goalpost just keeps going further and further, Bregalad. And now, where are the Entwives? We've lost them. They're gone.
That's kind of what happens. That's kind of what happens. Is the oldest rowan trees were planted by the Ents to try to please the Entwives. But they looked at them and smiled and said they knew where whiter blossom and richer fruit were growing.
Yeah, it's like, I tried to explain those, like, it's the thought, like, I know that you can create better fruit or better blossoms or whatever, but, like, I did this for you, and, like, I thought you'd be, like, at least pretend to, like, be happy, or, like, oh, okay, you do care. But no, I can see how I'm the asshole here by not getting you the best fruit and the best flowers.
Yet there are no trees of all that race, the people of the rose, that are so beautiful to me. And these trees grew and grew till the shadow of each was like a green hall, and their red berries in autumn were a burden and a beauty and a wonder. Birds used to flock there. I like birds, even when they chatter, and the rowan has enough to spare. But the birds became unfriendly and greedy, and tore at the trees, and threw the fruit down and did not eat it. Then the orcs came with axes and cut down my trees. I came and called them by their long names, but they did not quiver, they did not hear or answer. They lay dead. I've never felt
that.
bad for a tree before. Like I've never felt like
Yeah.
I've never felt a tree's death before.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, I felt that when I read that. I was like, damn.
like it really makes
Bregolad's
you.
been through a fucking lot.
Yeah. Like it really makes you. You're like, yes, Saruman. What the fuck? How dare you cut down these trees? Somebody loved those trees.
Yeah, especially when last book we were talking about the hobbits just casually wiping out trees.
That's different.
Yeah, that was a shitty forest.
They weren't.
It was an
Roman
asshole
trees.
forest.
They weren't this guy's trees.
Yeah.
They didn't have someone to poetically make me feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Boy,
even Tom Bombadil was kind of like, man, yeah, the old forests are kind of asshole trees. Yeah, just kind of stay out of their way and it'll be fine. But yeah, they're assholes. Maybe Bregolad needs to go to the old forest and get those trees to quit being such assholes. I bet he could, but
maybe he will.
Maybe he will.
God, I hope he doesn't die. I just realized I have no memory of what happens to Bregolad.
Yeah, I do not know. And I'm kind of worried for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ents have decided, after a long deliberation, as is their custom, that they're going to go march on Isengard. And they're just, it reminded me of the old man in the sea. We're going to go, and we're either going to kick Saruman's ass and avenge our tree comrades, or we're done. This is it. And he talked about how there used to be like an elf song for the end of the Ents, and at the end they're going to find those Ent wives, and maybe this will be when they find those Ent wives, because it's the end. It's the last march of the Ents.
The elf song is actually really good. Now we've joked about Tolkien songs. I don't love all of them.
Yeah, I don't love all of them, and I definitely don't love the fact that Frank Herbert took this and ran with it for a while.
Yeah, but the chapter ends with them marching off to war. They arrive on a hill where they can see Isengard, and Treebeard says, "Night lies over Isengard," and the chapter ends. And this is just, I could see on a first reading it's not very good, but this is such a fucking solid chapter. The song kind of goes into one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I'm sorry this episode's long.
Is it a two-parter? I don't know.
We'll see how long this goes on. But the song about the Entwives. So the first thing we've alluded to with the Entwives is there's a difference of opinion about growing things between Ents and Entwives. And this is very much something Tolkien would have thought a lot about. He is somebody who loves walking through the woods. He loves trees. But he also really appreciates rural agricultural life. And how do you square those two things? You have to cut down trees to plant a field, usually. And that's the dichotomy between the Ents and the Entwives. The Ents shepherd wild trees. They love the forests. They let the trees grow wherever they want to. They don't plan them. They don't. They tell them what to do a little bit, but they don't really do anything close to agriculture. Not that level of organization. Whereas the Entwives are gardeners. They want to create useful things. I was thinking about this the whole time, and I don't know how involved Tolkien would have been in some of these movements that were sort of taking hold in England at the time he was writing. But like, bizarrely, this is around the time people are starting to get into like Wicca and old religion. Like there's a growing obsession with the countryside, and a growing interest in some of the ancient, more like pagan festival traditions that are still somewhat preserved, though Christianized, in some rural villages. And in Wicca, in like Gardnerian Wicca, the original one created by Gerald Gardner, um, there's two deities. There's the horned god of the forest, and there's the goddess. The goddess is the more powerful. But there's this like Gardner equated like the masculine with this free spirit hunter type thing that is dominant in winter, and the feminine energy was the more like, I would say, like productive, reproductive, planned agricultural thing. And so I kind of wondered, like, the Entwives basically create agriculture. They create all of the crops, like all of the corn, all of the flowers, all of the fruiting trees, and they manage those and plant orchards and gardens and stuff. And they teach these techniques to men, like capital M men, and are kind of the foundation of agrarian society. And that's why the Ents try planting rowan trees to, lure them back. They're like, look, we did fruit. See, we like your thing. And the Entwives are like tapping him on the shoulder, like, you don't get it, buddy. You just don't get it. And then unfortunately, we learn that's sort of what gets them into trouble, because their gardens become a target of Sauron. Sauron pursues
Sauron or Morgoth?
Sauron. Sauron is the one that finally does them in. I'm going to read a letter from Tolkien. This is a letter where he was asked a number of questions, but one of them was about the fate of the Entwives. And what Tolkien has to say is, I think that in fact the Entwives had disappeared for good, being destroyed with their gardens in the War of the Last Alliance, Second Age, 3429 to 3441, when Sauron pursued a scorched earth policy and burned their land against the advance of the allies down the Anduin. They survived only in the agricultural knowledge transmitted to men and hobbits. Some, of course, may have fled east or even have become enslaved. Tyrants, even in such tales, must have an economic and agricultural background to their soldiers and metal workers. If any survived so, they would indeed be far estranged from the Ents, and any rapprochement would be difficult, unless experience of industrialized and militarized agriculture had made them a little more anarchic. I hope so, but I don't know. So he's saying there, and I'm sorry if I didn't read that very well, Tolkien never met a sentence too long, especially in his letters.
He's an Ent. He's an
Yeah.
Ent at heart.
But essentially what he's saying is that, yeah, Sauron, the Entwives' gardens stood between Sauron and the allies. He destroyed those because, as the allies would have taken them, that would have been a huge advantage to them in terms of supply. It's possible that some Entwives fled. It's possible that Sauron captured some Entwives because Sauron also needs to feed his troops. And in fact, if you look at the map of...
Just magic up some of that magic water. Can Sauron not do that?
I don't think he can.
Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that Ents are trolls are the dark mirror of Ents. Yeah.
But if you look at a map real quick, a map of Mordor, one of the things you would think from the movies is that Mordor is nothing but the volcanic wasteland, but that's not the case.
Yeah, because that'd be hard to do anything with.
Yeah, Mordor actually has an inland sea, the Sea of Nirn, or the Sea of Nirnen, And in a region of Mordor called Nirn, there is agricultural land. That is the breadbasket of Mordor. That's where Sauron has enslaved mostly humans, I think, to grow crops for his armies. That's what he feeds them. And so it's possible he could have taken Entwives and enslaved them. And what Tolkien's saying when he says, unless their experience had made them a little more anarchic, Tolkien draws a distinction between factory farming and the, single family farmstead. One, of course, he finds very unwholesome, and the other he finds wholesome. He can imagine that perhaps an Entwife who has experienced the horrors of factory farming would maybe come around to the Ent way of thinking, that maybe things should be a little more freewheeling, less organized, like maybe organization can go too far. That's a balance Tolkien's always trying to strike in his own philosophy as well as in the philosophy of Lord of the Rings. Like, we need some level of organization, we need some level of technology, but how do we do it without taking it to an unhealthy extreme? And I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was really interesting that he chose to make
It's
the
a
Ents.
shame that all it took for the wives to listen to the and husbands was the
Have
Dark
you had a
Lord
fight with your wife
capturing them and
recently?
enslaving them and destroying their way of life and casting a shadow across the world. But
Is everything okay at home, Nate? I could tell you one thing 100%. In my marriage, I'm the Entwife. And Shy is the Ent. If anyone was for anarchy, it's Shy. But yeah, then the next thing I was going to bring up, I don't know. I find the gender dynamics with the Ents a lot more fascinating than I did before. I remember on my first read, I thought, oh, Entwives and Ents, that's just some weird story about trees. And, the Entwives being gone is why the Ents, why we don't see Ents around today. That's Tolkien's explanation for how they died out. But now I'm sitting here reading it and I'm like, oh, this is actually like this is a big commentary on humanity's relationship with growing things, and the gendered emphasis is interesting.
yes,
Interesting,
that's
and
why.
maybe a little like neo-pagan. I'm not sure. Tolkien would hate that I said that, but I think he's maybe unintentionally absorbing or converging on an idea that, again, a movement of people he would have hated. Kind of agree with him on stuff. But yeah, let's talk about this. Mary is questioning the strength of the Ents. Will you really break the doors of Isengard? And Treebeard, he's like, I lift.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bitch, I'm huge.
You do not know perhaps how strong we are. Maybe you have heard of trolls. They are mighty strong, but trolls are only counterfeits made by the enemy in the great darkness in a mockery of Ents, as orcs were of elves. We are stronger than trolls. We are made of the bones of the earth. We can split stone like the roots of trees, only quicker, far quicker, if our minds are roused, if I want to. If we are not hewn down or destroyed by fire or blast of sorcery, we could split Isengard into splinters. And if we don't, it's probably because they cheated with fire and or sorcery. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's another interesting thing. I had to keep reminding myself as I'm reading it, this is Treebeard's perspective. Treebeard is old. It's worth a lot. But like with everything in the mythology, like if there's a question of like, well, are trolls intelligent? And I think somebody actually asks him in the letters. I think we talked about this in our Hobbit episodes. If you go back and listen to that, when Bilbo encountered the trolls, somebody felt bad for the trolls, and sort of asked him if, trolls are people too. And
the answer is no. So it's
Tolkien,
okay if they turn to stone.
Tolkien's thing is like, no, but like also it was a children's story, and I didn't know I was going to write this whole big theologically complex.
Yeah, I wouldn't have named him Bill.
Yeah. And so there's an interesting question there, is like, are trolls intelligent? Now, the trolls we see in Lord of the Rings don't display a lot of personality, but the trolls we see in The Hobbit do.
It sounds like when Sauron started regaining his power, he started like dominating them.
That's a neat little thing for Tolkien to clean up something that can't really be cleaned up, because the sad truth is,
you're not gonna have a bunch of trolls arguing in Moria about who's gonna be busting the door in to get the halflings. Yeah, you need that troll to be a big dumb idiot to run through the door.
Those trolls in The Hobbit are obviously people. And if Morgoth created them in mockery events, and Morgoth can't create people, how did he do that?
That is interesting, because there's that thing where like, well, maybe the orcs are men or elves that are corrupted, but trolls aren't trees. No. I don't think you can corrupt a creature to grow like flesh.
His thing, I think the thing goes that trolls are created from stone.
Oh, and they return to stone with the sun, Ben.
Again, the holy light undoes the dark magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But does it fit the theology?
I don't know. What were dwarves originally made of? Can you just do that, but with trolls?
Dwarves have the blessing of Iluvatar.
Yeah, but at first, weren't they like clockwork creatures, and then he made them real? Okay.
But he made them real.
Okay. So what if trolls are just like clockwork stone monsters?
Then why do they have so much personality?
Because...
So the dwarves are described, and this is...
Because they don't have personalities. This is Bilbo. He was
he was inventing it.
Yeah, he really wanted flourish.
He really wanted you to... He actually killed what was essentially an animal, but he really wanted you to think he killed a person.
Yes.
He was going for that street cred.
Yeah.
He wanted you to know that troll had hopes and dreams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All three of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why they had a wallet that could talk. And no one ever mentions that.
They did have a talking wallet.
That seems really like it'd be real helpful if you needed to say like put an Arkenstone inside of a safe place that could talk and tell you when it was. Yeah, I'm just spitballing here.
If they ever reboot Lord of the Rings, I'm just going to reread The Hobbit and do the podcast again, and we're going to pay a lot of attention to that. Oh, dang, I lost my train of thought with the Bilbo thing. I think you derailed me.
Why do they have personalities?
Oh yeah, why do they have personalities? But they do, and I think this is a challenge where Tolkien anthropomorphizes a lot, and then again, you have to keep in mind the whole Morgoth can't create life thing is Silmarillion stuff. The Silmarillion is unfinished, but
also you can take into account that you can just blame Bilbo or Frodo for anything that doesn't quite add up, like he did that one time where
I do
Bilbo
remember
just
what I was
got
say.
the ring from Gollum. Oh, what was it?
Aule, when he created the dwarves. This is something we'll have to talk about when we get to the Silmarillion. The dwarves. And we are getting to
that. I got the book. We have to do it.
We'll do it. It's fine. The dwarves don't act on their own. Like, they're clockwork creatures in the sense that literally Aule has to tell them what to do. Aule like sort of controls them. He like remote controls them, but like when they run out of orders, they just sort of stop moving. If he's not around.
So here are your orders. We need you to harass anyone who comes on this road and argue about who's going to eat him. And when you have a moment, go ahead and eat him. But if one of you starts an argument, I want you to argue with each other until you figure out how you're going to eat him. And then we're going to put a loop. So it's just going to constantly run this script. If you find treasure, you need to put it in a hole in the ground. So that's your script.
Morgoth can only use generative AI. He can't. That's why
all the trolls had 8 fingers on each hand.
Well, the trolls had 8 fingers on each hand. That's why they had a talking wallet out of nowhere.
What happened to that wallet? Did they burn it or like did it turn to stone, or like did they just leave it with the statues?
Maybe, horrifyingly, the wallet's still alive, but it's encased in stone.
Oh my god.
Yeah, think about that.
I am.
Anyway, that's chapter 4, Treebeard of...
That was a long recording session.
It was a long... I knew this one was going to be long because I knew I was going to talk about a lot of stuff. But I'm sure, like with every episode of this podcast, I am going to think of a million things I wish I'd said as soon as I hit the stop button. But it is unfortunately time to hit the stop button. Please feel free to comment if there's anything I missed that you would like to talk about.
Go to our Patreon.
Go to our Patreon if you want the episodes early. Or if you want to hear us talk more about D&D.
Or if you want to hear us talk about Bill Clinton's book.
You're really pushing it this year. You're really going to bring that up after the Divine Secrets of the Yaga Sisterhood. Okay. Nate's trying to... I see why your wife's mad at you.
The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road is gone, and I must follow it, if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet. And whither then, I cannot say.